it away, Felina.
Hey, thanks. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining. I am Felina Selden, as said, and we have several wonderful panelists with us. But before we get started, I wanted to make sure you understood that should I show my screen now? I forgot to ask you that. I can go ahead
Sure.
and share it.
Go for it.
Well, I clicked and it won't let me.
Oh, here, let me make you a. You should hopefully be able to now.
Okay. Is it sharing? What is it sharing? What can you see? I can't tell.
It looks like a PDF, maybe.
Okay, good. Trying to make sure I'm sharing the right thing. So the Office of Sustainability of Sustainable Cleveland addresses health through sustainability by way of our CAP equity goals, which are on the screen for everyone to see. We do that through shared economic prosperity and inclusion, improved health, resilient and vital neighborhoods, engaging with the community members and doing transformational changes. We also have examples of those by the 10-minute walk to a safe program park, increasing the Cleveland tree canopy, which we're going to do 30% by 2040, and access to healthy local food to reduce food deserts. So that's the perspective that we come from, right, from our office. But we have a panel who are going to actually elaborate on what health through sustainability means in their respective areas. We have Kennedy Smith, who is a youth sustainability leadership participant and a student. She is in her senior year, so I'm really excited about hearing what she has going on for her senior year in all of her projects. We have Indigo Bishop, who has a wealth of information, having worked in a number of nonprofit areas and most recently with a quasi-governmental agency. We have Kim Smith Woodford, who is a commercial utilities sales manager, as well as I look forward to hearing what she's doing in her spare time in the community. And we're hoping to have Lena Boswell join us soon, but if not, she works for University Hospitals as a dietary clerk, and she has a program in the community, in the Huff community, where she is building a really great program for people who need to learn about food by way of doing a community garden. Now we're going to have our panel discussion and have everybody introduce themselves. Trying to stop sharing for a second. Feel free to chime in, guys. You can introduce yourselves by popcorn style. Kim, Indigo, Kennedy.
I can go. I was muted. Faces interrupting. Go ahead. You go.
No, go ahead, Indigo.
I'll just go. But my name's Indigo Bishop. I'm the Twist Neighborhoods Administrator at the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority, overseeing a federal planning grant under HUD for the Buckeye Woodhill neighborhood. But I've been doing community engagement work and project management and fundraising and on the ground work with people trying to change their communities for the better for about 12 years now. And I live in the Larchmere Buckeye neighborhood now.
Well, I'm Kim Smith Woodford, and I work by day as a public utilities commercial sales manager for the city of Cleveland Public Power, where I engage with developers and contractors and community members in providing them with electrical service and project managing it along the way for the installation or removal, either or, but we like installations and just seeing that project from start to completion. But what I do in my spare time, what I really enjoy is getting out in green space, public space, nature, and taking people along with me. And when I say people, more specifically, people of color, Black people, in just getting out in that space, because for one, realizing that there is that connection that you've always had, that lineage connection to nature, the health and wellness aspect of it. And of course, while you're out in there, you're finding that joy. Hence, Journey on Yonder is that uh, component that I use to get people out. So thank you for having me today.
And my name is Kennedy Simone Smith. I am 17 years old and I am a student at Hawkins School going into my senior year of high school. I'm involved in sustainability through the Youth Sustainability Leadership Program. I did that program for the past 2 years, and I did a project called Everyday Hero, which essentially encourages people in my community, so my school community and my local neighborhood community, to practice sustainable habits and to be a hero for the environment every day, whether that's through making sure that you don't use non-disposable or don't use disposable coffee cups, from making sure that you use proper recycling disposal methods and things of that sort. So we have different missions that people can do that can help them be a more sustainable person every day. And that's just like me on the sustainability side. I work with a lot of different sustainability groups in my school to try to make sure that we just mitigate the waste that we collect just as a community. And then other than sustainability, I'm also a contemporary gospel jazz violinist. So I spend a lot of my time pursuing music. I'm in the Contemporary Youth Orchestra and the Cleveland Orchestra Youth Orchestra. So I spend a lot of time there, and like I perform on national and international stages with that. And then outside of that, I'm also very STEM focused. So my goal is to go into computer science in college, and I want to make sure that everything that I do create is sustainable and promotes that way. So I participate in coding programs locally, and I've done programs at MIT, Princeton, etc.
Kristen, did you unmute me? So we're going to transition now into the questions for everyone to respond to. And we can do this again popcorn style. The purpose of this is so that we can share the knowledge that you have as panelists with our audience, as well as do some knowledge transfer, knowledge sharing with each other, because we are all building community. And Kennedy, since you finished, you can go first in this round. How did you choose your area of focus? The secondary questions are also below in the Black. So if you want to elaborate, if you'd like to elaborate or go a little deeper, you can also answer what was your inspiration to start it in the area of health equity, environmental work, or sustainability, to give you more of a focus.
Okay. Sorry, I keep getting like muted, then unmuted, but I think I'm good. So I really chose my focus area, and my focus area is really more of a local base in trying to do things that can help others prioritize long-term sustainability and kind of sustainability within your own community, rather than like an overall type of like citywide thing or trying to change, I don't know, policy or the way we do things. I mainly focus on personal ways that we can be sustainable and things that are easier for actually people my age to control. So I thought that would be the area where I could have the biggest impact. And the inspiration to really get started, I have always been kind of worried about things such as like global warming, and like in class, you know, in science, we learn about how it's negatively affecting the environment and the amounts of waste that we produce, whether it's just, you know, with our mass consumer culture or with just infrastructure and things like that. And so I wanted to find a way where I can make a difference and where I can encourage other people around me to make a difference as well. So I did research into ways that I can do little things that may help sustainability in the long run, and also educate others on the things that they can do as well. And I thought that hopefully by doing that, then there'd be more people my age and more people in my community more aware of the sustainability issue and why we need to be involved in it. And then also so these people can be aware of electing local politicians and government officials who also care about this issue, so that we can try to make a bigger impact later.
Indigo, Kim?
Alrighty. Well, in the work that I do with Journey on Yonder, it's about, you know, connecting to nature and green space, getting out in green space, and you know, letting that that idea of being out there, reimagining your space, coming away from where we are. You know, I lived in Chicago for quite some time, and always thought I loved that big city, but yet I remember growing up, I always loved hearing those birds chirping outside of my window. I knew how that made me feel. But didn't realize, you know, somewhere along the way that I never really realized that I didn't belong in that space because I didn't explore. When I say hearing the birds chirp out my window, that was wonderful. But to get out into the wood, into that wooded space, was a whole nother story. It didn't exist for me. So, but it was always something that I wanted to do because I just felt, you know, you see the stories, you hear the stories, and they were so wonderful, but you didn't see faces out there that looked like you. So, and in the stories you heard, just that continue to perpetuate the disconnect because of the fear, you know, our historical fear, or the historical fear brought on by systemic racism. So later in life, I was able to get engaged with my husband, actually, who got me outdoors more often. And I just realized just how emotionally that the impact it had on me, how wonderful I felt, how at peace and less stress I felt. And so I just, you know, it's like, boy, can I bottle this up? And why, where's everybody at? So then the opportunity to become a leader with this organization, a national organization, Outdoor Afro, and my husband is all in this shot here. Say hey, Kelvin. So this opportunity came with Outdoor Afro, and that's a national organization whose mission is to you know, shift the narrative of who gets outdoors and out in nature. And I'm like, you know what, this was just the perfect thing I needed. And it was you know, something I took very seriously, but it was so moving and rewarding because creating space through events and activities out in our local parks and our national parks with people who share the story. Well, hey, I always wanted to get out in nature, but you know, I didn't see anybody who looked like me or anyone in my immediate circle who engaged in that. But they knew how it made them feel. They knew that that space provided, you know, an opportunity to be distracted from well, in numbers, to be distracted from the racial trauma or just the trauma of everyday living.
And how
That
does that, let me interrupt you and ask, how did that help reduce any of the health disparities or raise awareness of the
well,
inequality that was going on?
yeah. So because of those events, I was able to uh, have conversations about the disparities, that is happening in public green spaces. So raising that awareness that also helps of the disparity in green space, but also to know that there's that whole institutionalized racism is why you may find there's that is connected to health disparities for your, you for your immediate family or friends, as well as those food disparities as well. So it's all about educating along the journey, because the more that you know, the more, at least my goal is to shift that narrative, but also begin to build your relationship in green space, learn about conservation, you learn sustainability as well through the whole principles of being outdoors, leave no trace. So that's what inspired me, and that's what I'm hoping to do. And again, being involved with organizations like Black environmental leaders, I'm learning from a beautiful group of people who are working, African Americans who are working in various capacities of environments and green space. That is helping me to further evolve in this journey and bring others along with.
Thank you. Indigo, what would you like to?
So I love this question. I had to think a little hard on it about. I was like, I did choose it consciously, but I think it started in undergrad. I went on a trip to Kenya. I took a class and went on a 10-day trip to Kenya, and we were touring different nonprofit organizations and visiting different groups of people in the city, but also in rural areas. And one of the places we visited was the second largest slum in the country. It's called Dandura, and it's right up against a huge trash dump. So, I'm sorry, it was the second largest the site of the second largest trash dump in the country, right next to this community of really poor people. And so it was the first time I'd actually come like face to face with the impact of the waste, and not just not just reading about it or not just hearing about it somewhere, but seeing it and smelling it and seeing people live like literally right next to miles and miles of trash, and living their lives and figuring a way through it. And there are kids like walking through and collecting items out of the trash to either be used as food or to be recycled into something else. And like you could see, all you could see for miles and miles was trash and the like steaming heap of chemicals that were coming up from the sun bearing down on it. And it just completely changed how I thought about what I consume, like buy and bring into my home, and also what I discard, because every time I hadn't recycled before that. But after that, every time I went to throw something away, I thought about like, who is this going to end up next to? Because I know it's not going to Kenya, but it's going to go to somebody else who's poor. They're going to have to live right next to it, next to my trash. So that really fundamentally changed the way I thought about my own actions and how that played out into the world, and the world that I want to live in doesn't involve people who have to live next to my trash. So I got more and more interested in it after that. In grad school, I studied community and social development. And in undergrad, I studied sociology, so I was learning about how this is not, it's not a new thing, it's not a rare thing for poor people to be left with a disproportionate impact of the way that we mistreat our planet, and that they're the ones who face the brunt of it. And so in grad school, I was learning ways to combat that through community development and planning, and so that's kind of the route that I took to do the work. So it's a little bit, it's not as directly about sustainability, but it is about sustainability, because when we're not in right relationship with the earth, and whether the earth is our country or our state or our city or our block or our house, we're not in right relationship with ourselves. So I think it's a huge reflection of that. And I try to live it out and use that to influence the work too.
That's an excellent answer and a good segue for the next question. And I always say, the person who speaks last speaks first. Indigo,
Oh, man.
what does sustainability mean in your area of expertise? How do you define sustainability, and how do you implement or apply sustainable principles and practices in your current work? I'll leave it up so you can look at the question a little longer.
In your work. My area of expertise is community development and project management, essentially. What does it mean for that? Sustainable principles and practices. I'm going to go a little abstract here. I think one of the ways that I incorporate sustainability in community development work that I do is by involving the people most impacted by the work in creating the solution, defining the problem and creating the solutions for the work itself. And while that's not necessarily like directly benefiting the earth or decreasing waste or getting people outside, I think it's when we do development in a way that doesn't incorporate the people who are most directly impacted by it, it's a waste of financial resources and a huge waste of time, because oftentimes we develop solutions that it's impossible for them to be effective if we're not utilizing the knowledge and resources from the people who are living it.
Right, but then add the layer of health.
Oh, sure. In terms of how it impacts people's health.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I understand the question.
So the way you divide the designing of a project, when you went in to look at neighborhood revitalization, right? Because that's one of the things that you focused on.
Right.
What was the health component of that particular project, and how is it going to affect people with what you were doing?
Oh, with the project that I'm working on?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you can, it's pretty clear that the way that the footprint that I'm looking at in the Buckeye Woodhill neighborhood, the way the area has been designed and suffered from 80 years of disinvestment and systemic racism, absolutely has very direct consequences on people's health outcomes, on mental health, on physical health, emotional health, on people's ability to get jobs, on people's ability to access fresh food, on all the things. Where we live and the environment that we're in really impacts everything.
And how does your work change that?
By designing solutions that work for people today, but that also attract investment to combat the fact that there hasn't been any. I like to make the comparison of a house. So if you have a house or you buy a house and you live in it for 80 years, but you don't put any resources into fixing or upgrading or maintaining anything, you don't put any money into it, it's going to be in terrible shape after 80 years. And a lot of our communities have not had significant investment put into them for close to a century. And we expect them to operate ideally and for people to be thriving in them, or blame them for not thriving in those communities. And so a lot of this is just a new way of approaching the work, and with open eyes about the past and how do we not recreate that same history.
Thank you. Kim or Kennedy, what would you add?
Well, with my day-to-day job, we have, there's been proposals, as you know, and a lot of it's in the news, of bringing sustainable energy to our customers. But that's not all. While it might be easy to do, it comes down to the end user and the affordability aspect of it. So with that, on an energy side, I don't know that I can really speak on that to a great degree, because again, our customers in this, especially in this COVID era that we're in, are having a hard time being able to pay their utilities. So to bring the innovative, sustainable energy projects online, which can because of where we are right now, can be more expensive than what they're paying currently. So on that side, that's where I can speak. It's tough to really engage in that from a public utilities side, but internally in the area where I work, my push is to create a stronger awareness of being sustainable, and recycling, for at least when we were really recycling, getting people aware, becoming aware of the purpose, the need to recycle, and how to do it. So let's learn it here in our workspace, but I want you to also be able to use that in your personal environment. Learn those concepts and use that, and become an advocate of recycling. And when we get back on board and can find out what we're, how we're moving in that space successfully, my goal is to keep everyone engaged. From that Journey on Yonder side, it's kind of boots on the ground, end user, learning those concepts of leave no trace, conservation, and stewardship. And the goal is to, and I have done work in the communities that Indigo is working in, and that's what I'm all about. The what I do isn't specific to affluent versus marginalized communities. It's getting in with Journey on Yonder more specific African Americans and Latinx on board.
And to add on to that, there's a lot of different lenses that you can take sustainability in. I have like three personal ones and then one general one that I think's applicable, and I try to go through them quickly. So the general one, if you're talking about, what does sustainability mean in your area of expertise? Well, everyone should be an expert on themselves. You are essentially one of the centers of your life. And when you think of sustainability on a personal level, sustainability is not only just like things that are, for the environment, because the environment is something that directly affects our health. So when you're thinking about being sustainable, you can be thinking about being sustainable via like what you eat, who you're buying your food from, how your food is packaged, etc. You can be sustainable in your transportation, where how you're transporting, etc. Doing different things is going to affect your body differently, and it's also going to affect the environment differently, which affects you and will affect others later down the line. Like Ms. Bishop was talking about with the trash and like, communities living near trash dumps, like the trash that you choose to throw away, the products that you choose to use affects other people's health. So thinking about sustainability on that personal level is also important. And then me giving some like personal examples. So like, my area of expertise is being a student. Being a student is my full-time job. And so incorporating sustainability in that is like, how much paper am I using? How efficient am I being with like how I'm using my technology? Because that also with, using fossil fuels and things like that for power. How am I doing things that are more unplugged? Things in that nature. But then there's also my job as a musician. Like how much paper am I using for that? Like what kind of like pollution am I generating by practicing at 2 a.m., like things like that. And then my overall bigger job that I'll be doing for a long time is my job as a computer scientist, which is really important. How are the things that I'm making going to affect the environment in the future? Making sure that all the processes I create or, the gadgets I make are things that can be compostable or biodegradable or things that can help people help the environment later. I have to be in charge of ensuring that those things are going to be the best for the earth and for everyone in general.
You guys make it easy for me to do these segues. I can't thank you enough. So my question next is, how do you define health in your current role? That is the secondary part for this, Kennedy, because the person who speaks last speaks first. The examples are to consider mental, emotional, environmental, physical, dietary, or spiritual. So you can pick one or all to respond about in terms of how you define health in your current role. And your current role can be as a student.
Selena, can you place that question up? I couldn't quite hear you.
Sorry. Yes. There you go. So how do you define health in your current role? Examples to consider: mental, emotional, environmental, physical, dietary, spiritual, right? So you can pick one or pick more than one. And your current role, for example, even though Kennedy's got to answer this first, is you can be a student, you can be a hiker, or cyclist. The current role is kind of a broad thing. Depends on how you want to define it. So let Kennedy answer first.
This goes back to the first point that I was talking about for the previous question about how sustainability is more than an environment thing, that it's also a personal, physical, and all those things, emotional, dietary, and spiritual type of thing. Your health and your health, like general health, is directly tied to how sustainable you are. And, if you think about the definition of sustainability, it's making sure that it's something that can be effective, that can work in the long time. And it's like, don't you want your body to be sustainable? Don't you want to be able to stay healthy for a longer time, to live longer? And I feel like that also applies directly to, you know, our communities. We want to make sure that our communities continue to thrive for long periods of time. We want to be able to make sure that everything that we're doing now will be everything that we're doing environmentally now is going to be good for our environments, and everything that we're doing on a personal level, physical. So, you know, what we're eating, the types of things that we choose to consume, whether it's like, whether it's, you know, buying a certain car because of how it, you know, uses fuel, things like that, making sure that all of those things are not only good for our communities, but also good for yourself. So when I think about health, I think that sustainability can also be a definition for health, because in order for something to be sustainable, it inherently also has to be healthy.
Thank you. Wow. Anyone want to follow Kennedy with that one? Kim?
Well, yeah. That's a tough one to follow.
Yes.
But you know, in defining health and what I do in the outdoors, I would call it resiliency. We see the resilience in green space and nature, and it's, for me, it's reassuring. It's a reassuring reminder that we as a people are resilient as well. So, you know, in that space of mental wellness and physical wellness, that's what we're getting. I don't, outside of resiliency, that's pretty much where I am with this health, because with where we are now, without that, I mean, there's only room for to get better, to not better, but healthier, less, having more of an understanding of emotional health, and as well as knowledge of your physical health. You know, we as African Americans, you know, we suffer historically from certain diseases at a higher proportionate rate than whites, and high blood pressure, diabetes, and cholesterol. And so getting out in that space, you know, redefining what a hike is. You know, it's not what they call the crunchy kind of thing, unless you want that, right? But it can be a wonderful experience. It's something that can be a family affair, no matter how your family structure might be set up in terms of parent to child ratio and your doggy. And getting that better understanding, and moving in that space in a way that's not defined, that's not being defined by what you see typically in people out engaging in outdoor space, is great. And that's why, you know, it's about, you know, technology, social media, you know, posting those pictures of your journey and your experiences out there. I have found encourages and inspires others to get out there, although they want to join someone with, you know, that's what it's all about. So yeah, that's what I would say with that health aspect, in what I do in connection with green space.
Thank you. So you're going to wrap up that question, and we're going to switch to the final question before we take audience questions.
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer that mental, emotional, spiritual, environmental, all those things are connected.
Mm-hmm.
You can't impact one without impacting another. but in my current role, I'm trying to think which role I want to speak from. Um, um, well, one of the things that we're focusing on, just in terms of community engagement, is building relationships and connections between leaders in the community and so leaders within Woodhill Homes, the public housing inside the Buckeye Woodhill neighborhood, but not just building their own capacity and relationships with each other and with their other residents there, but also with leadership in the surrounding community, because once this project is done in 5 or 7 years, and the staff have gone away or moved on to different roles and positions, if the people who live there aren't stronger for the work that we've done together and aren't better connected to each other and able to like mobilize resources and decide on what they want and decide on what they don't want and raise a fuss when things are not going the way they want it to go, and not able to come together and celebrate the successes that they have, then we weren't successful. Like, we can build all the houses that we want and we can design new streets, but if people aren't able to connect on a fundamental level and build their community themselves, then it's great, but it doesn't get us exactly where we need to be.
So now, in closing, name 3 things residents can do to promote health equity through sustainability. This can be at home, school, work, and or in the community. And you're going to look for me to share that screen. So let me share that screen. There you go.
Health through sustainability.
And this is directly because you like tie it right back to what you said. When you have done your job and you have all moved on and the residents are left to make sure their health remains intact by way of the resources that are readily available to them, what are the 3 things that the residents can do to promote health equity through sustainability?
This is a hard one. Does anybody else have ready with an answer?
I have 3 things.
Okay.
I have 3 things in like 3 different kind of sectors.
Great.
So for like environmentally, I have 3. I have like physically, environmentally, and kind of like emotionally. So kind of like more like spiritual. So for environmentally, I believe that one of the biggest things that people can do is be aware of how our local representatives, our local politicians, our people, in our mayor's office, what their priorities are when it comes to sustainability, especially for your city. I think that's very important, making sure that we're electing people who care about sustainability and make that a priority, and also making sure that we keep them accountable for what they said they're going to do. So it's like one of the biggest you can be doing. For another kind of nuanced thing, if we're also talking about, more physical, emotional well-being. I think that something that not a lot of people do, but we as a community are getting better at is letting people prioritize their mental and emotional health and checking in with people who you care about on that matter. I think that's really important for a community to actually be sustainable. We all have to be okay. We all have to be able to talk through our issues, and we all have to be able to support each other when we do need help. Because how are we going to work together to solve the environmental issues that we created if we can't, if we can't work together, or we have, emotional or mental issues that there's no one to help us with. So I think being a friend, being a good family member, checking in on people in that way. And then I think more of like a physical, this is like more related to food. I think supporting local farmers, buying locally made things, that's also really important, because that's going to be one of the places where you can get the safest produce, where you can actually check better what's going in it, what kind of chemicals they're using. So that's another thing that you can start doing.
Hey, you guys asked her to go first. Now I want to see how you follow up. Thanks, Kennedy.
Look, I agree with you, Kennedy. You know, it's all about policy, looking out for our village, and you know, shifting that thinking of mental wellness being a taboo in the Black community. It's real. It's real, and so you know, it's about you know, connecting with. We're social emotional creatures, and I would say just you know, where we're feeling right, the way we in the state that we're in right now. You know, the numbers say that, you know, people are dealing with a lot of increased anxiety, depression, and loneliness. So there's, you know, don't be afraid to reach out. I can't, you know, Kennedy, you hit it. So those are, I just agree with what she's saying, but again, tearing down the stereotypes.
I would imagine you also encourage people to get outside.
Yes.
Under.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I continue to encourage people to get outdoors and share your experiences, because again, don't keep all that goodness to yourself. Share it, because people love to hear about those stories, and they want to know about well, what about me? Where do I fit in? Well, you fit in well. Just come on, let's do it. And you know, that's in stepping past your fear in this space, green space, you can reap great rewards physically and emotionally, and just you know, memories and experiences that you can take with you for a lifetime.
Thank you. And Indigo, we're going to wrap up with you.
Oh, man, that's a lot of pressure. I'm echoing all the things that everybody else has said. There's a million things that people can do, so I like this narrowing it down to three. I'll just speak on the three things that come to mind that I like to do to promote health through sustainable practice. So one is I like to run errands with people I love instead of by myself, and so it cuts down on carbon footprint and just makes it more enjoyable to go grocery shopping. I like to grocery shop with my mom. Another is I buy groceries at the local farmers market on Saturdays, or order through a CSA. But one thing that I could do better, or I want to do better at, is promoting those things with other people. So inviting people to come along, because everything's less scary when you do it with a friend or with somebody who's done it before. So that's two, and then three is I love compost. I think it's the most magical thing in the world, that nothing ever actually dies. It just evolves into something else and provides more life and nutrients for the next thing. And so I want to share my love of compost with people and reduce some food waste that way too.
So it would be to have people start their own compost.
Yeah.
All right, that works. And I just want to say thank you to everyone, to each and every one of you, for participating, and for our audience for joining us. And remind everyone that October 14th through the 15th is the Sustainable Cleveland Summit. So I want you to save the date. And I want to turn it over to Kristen, possibly Kathy, because there may be a couple questions that we can get in at this point.
Sure. I think just quickly, I'll invite any of our attendees, if you do have any questions for our panelists, please include those in the chat box. Kathy will, you can send those to all panelists or directly to Kathy. I think one thing that I just want to share, one comment that I received, Kennedy is such a great role model to young kids. Let's do whatever it takes to bring her back to Cleveland after college. So Kennedy, we've been very impressive, and I think many of our attendees want to make sure you come back here to Cleveland and bring that great energy back after you've learned all you can in college and come apply it here. So wanted to make sure I pass that along because I got that very early on in the presentation and I was like, I want to make sure I share that. And just personally, Indigo, I loved running errands with people you love. I think my mom's going to really enjoy that when I suggest that to her as well. Let's see. Kathy, any questions on your end?
No, I've been monitoring the chat box and we haven't had any questions.
Okay. Well, I think with that, we're at 5:30. We're just about 5:30, so I don't want to keep anybody too much past the time. But again, Felina, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, since there aren't a lot of questions, I would hope to ask this as a final favor to the panelists, and that is, could you share a few resources for others just getting started or looking to learn more in either what you do or something in sustainability or health equity? Feel free, and we will post all of that on our social media platforms as well as on our website.
Awesome. Are you saying they'll do that like after?
Yes, afterwards.
Okay, yeah, perfect. And we typically will do, for those of us joining, we'll post this recording and then any resources or information that we that has been discussed will get posted within the next week or so.
And one of the final things I will say is that the Youth Sustainability Leadership Program is about to start recruitment for the 2021 cohort. Feel free to check back and for our application and outline. It should be posted no later than, I hope, tomorrow. We'll see.
Okay. Well, with that, we will conclude the meeting and stop recording. And again, thank you all for joining us and have a great rest of your week. We'll see you soon.